originally the enlisted men's ward. It was. The house where the apothecary lived is out back, and I will take the opportunity to point that out to you at the end of the tour. It is a private residence today, though, so unfortunately we can't go inside. But I'll show you some history of it at the end, and I'll show you where our gardens are. Our apothecary was named Ramon de Fuentes, and he was pretty educated in his own right. He didn't have to undergo 10 years of university medical training like a physician. Wasn't necessary for him. An apothecary at this period would have undergone an apprenticeship to learn the trade. What he's going to have to be is a bit of a botanist, a bit of a chemist, a bit of a physiologist. He's got to know how plants work, how they affect the human body, and how the human body works as well. Now, what I have on this counter here, a variety of herbs we've been using in medicine for centuries. I'm just going to talk about some of the more popular ones today. But the first one I want to talk about is this right here, white willow bark. Now that dates back thousands of years. Hippocrates was the one to write about its curative properties. It would reduce fever, pain. At this hospital, at this period, they're using it for those same reasons, including pain management after surgery. Willow bark is around today. You can still buy it in this form if you're so inclined. You've got some side effects with it though, including the fact it's very abrasive on the stomach. In the late early 1900s, chemists tried to find a smoother way for this to go down. There's a chemical in willow bark, salicin. They create a synthetic version of that, acetylsalic acid. From that comes our modern day aspirin. So just precursor to aspirin right here. Also, fun fact, the chemists in the late early 1900s who came up with the acetylsalic acid are working under a German company. German company's Bayer. Of course, we still have Bayer aspirin today. Now, I mentioned in lieu of anesthesia, prior to surgeries, our soldiers are getting those tinctures to help them through that. We didn't think for a while the Spanish were using opioids as much as other Europeans, but turns out that yes, they were, just as much as everybody else. So odds are he's getting opium before surgery, more specifically tincture of that, so laudanum. So that's going to be effective. That's going to put him in a euphoric state during those surgeries. There are problems. It's addictive. We had overdosing occur. So we think in addition to that, there was an herbal tincture being used. That would have been made primarily with valerian root. Now valerian, pretty powerful sedative. It has this nice effect of calming you down and taking your anxieties away. Most importantly, making you want to go to sleep. I'm sure you all have had, or at least have heard of, chamomile tea. Chamomile is a nice mild sedative, also great for headaches and stomach aches, but it doesn't have as much strength as the valerian root. If you've ever had a tea called Sleepy Time Extra, that's the extra, it's valerian, and it's going to help more with insomnia. The soldiers, as I'm sure you can imagine, are getting much more than what's in Sleepy Time Extra tea. They're getting pretty high concentrated dosages of this in a tincture form to the point where it raised the natural melatonin levels in the body to higher than normal. He's tired, he's euphoric, the hopes are he'll fall asleep. That's going to make this surgery easier and everybody involved. If he doesn't fall asleep initially, there is still some good news. He's awake, but as I mentioned in the other room, he's not aware of what's happening. He's still so euphoric that in that 2 to 3 minutes the surgery takes, he's not completely aware of what's happening to him. And in a sense, the whole ordeal may have felt like more like a bad dream than anything else. Valerian root is around today, and it's still used for insomnia. Its worst side effect is that it makes you very tired and very groggy, which is great in surgery, not if you have plans. So if you ever do try it, just make sure it's measured properly, trust me. It's also got a bit of a downfall. It doesn't smell very well, very good. It's got a very pungent odor to it that I would describe as a sort of vinegar, but most people will say it's like a dirty gin sock or something. If you're curious to smell it at the end, you can, but make sure you smell lavender afterwards. That does help. That does bring me to lavender, which was one of the most used herbs at this hospital, though it was used mostly for cleaning purposes. The root word of lavender lava is to wash, and that's what they were doing with it here. They boil it in water, they clean the floors, the instruments, clothing. Today, we know lavender has antimicrobial, antiseptic, antibacterial properties. So again, it's a case of killing germs, but they don't have the exact awareness of what they're doing. They do know in a roundabout way that lavender helps with disease, because what they would do is burn it several times a day in something called escafeta, which is essentially incense. At this period, in addition to the four humors of the body theory, they believe in something called the theory of miasmas. That was the idea you had bad, dirty, stagnant air. That's what caused disease. And they thought by burning nice smelling things like lavender, it was going to help fight off those bad miasmas. Not completely be wrong. You are purifying the air when you clean with it, or when you burn it, excuse me. You're killing germs when you clean with it. The problem is if your patient already had an infection of a sort, it's not really going to help too much with recovery beyond the fact you're calming them at least when you burn it with aromatherapy, and you're at least purifying the air here at the hospital. I'm just going to talk about one more herb, and then I'll talk about how a few of these were prepared. The last herb I like to talk about is the rose hip, which is very high in vitamin C. There's actually more vitamin C in a rose hip than there is in an orange. And at this period, it was a treatment for scurvy. Now, citrus fruit is used, but rose hips are an alternative. They're a lot easier to travel with, especially over the seas. Very easy to prepare. They make teas, they make candies, jellies, and syrups. This is one I recommend taking if you think you're getting sick. It's a good way to fight off a cold. And here's really nicely hibiscus flower, which is also good for fighting off cold symptoms. And all you do is dry them out, crush them up, and add hot water. Well, use it in the user, of course. But just a nice way of stopping cold and stress. As far as how these are made into medicines at this time, you have several different methods. I'm just going to mention a few of those. Topically, you have things like poultices. Cocaine was used to numb topically. Going in line with the 4 humors of the body theory, often you're going to purge the body in some way, so they would use a lot of cathartics. 2 of the more popular being castor oil and calomel. Calomel was powdered mercury. We know today mercury does not work well at all, but back then that really was a go-to for medicine. That being because they thought it was purging the body of the toxins. Of course, today we know we're just putting more toxins in, because mercury is a heavy metal. Pills are around at this period as well. They don't work terribly well. They found that out rather quickly. The trouble with pills was the binding agents they were using. They were using things like beeswax. And I've also read of some cases where they were gilding pills with silver and gold. As you can imagine, that's not going to do much for you. It's going to go right through your body without giving you the medicinal properties you need. Even if that wasn't a problem, you have the problem of dosaging. They're making them by hand, so they're not measured equally all the time. You're also not getting very many in one go. In the mid-19th century, they came out with this. It's called a pill roller. And what they would do, it's an early measuring device, of course. What they would do is take the herbal ingredients, take binding agents, roll them out on this flat surface here. What you have is a long cylinder called a pill pipe that was created. They lay that down horizontally. They take the top part here, press, and cut. What's going to happen is the little pills are going to come rolling out. Now, not only were they more accurately measured, but you also got several pills in one go. So just a much more concise, effective way of measuring your pills. At this hospital, at this time, 2 of the more popular preparations were really simple things. Teas, tinctures. Teas work fine, but you want to conserve herbal ingredients for colder months, and a great way to do that was through tinctures. You take your herbal ingredients, your opioids, what have you, and add them to a base of alcohol or vinegar where you soak them for weeks or months until you had more of a concentrated essence of the herbal liquid form, and you take it as needed. Now those work well, but there's a catch. We are in a period where not everybody's literate. A lot of those tinctures were the same color, so they would color code to ensure people knew what they were taking. They use a variety of dyes for that, including this one right here, cochineal. Is anyone familiar with cochineal at all? It's also called carmine, and this is what it looks like when it's processed. I'll just sort of walk this by you. It's a little difficult to see in the bottle, but you're welcome to guess if you have any ideas. So, typically what I'll hear is pepper, seeds, or coal. It does look kind of like coal with a sheen to it. But what cochineal actually is an insect. It's a little beetle. And it lives on the prickly pear cactus in the southwest. Now, the Spanish found out about them when they came to the New World in the 1500s. Natives were wearing colors like red. And that is still sort of a status color in Europe at that time. So they asked the natives about it. They tell them about cochineal. I'll give you a simplified version. You have female, you have male. What you're getting in the dye, female. The male spread wings and fly away. The female leave a white waxy nest on that cactus where they lay their eggs. Now you'll see here and here men scraping them away to be harvested and then processed. Once they're processed, they look like the ones in the bottle I just showed you, but when you crush them up, you get what's called the perfect red or carmine red more than likely. And you can get other color dyes from this too. If you add salt to the base, you'll get more of a blue-purple color. If you add something like a citrus fruit acid, more of an orange color. Big money maker for the Spanish. It was their #2 export behind gold and silver. They traded it for centuries. It's a clothing dye, a cosmetic dye, a food dye. Medicinally, really it was just used for coloring tinctures as an agent for that. Though for a time it had a reputation of being a remedy, usually as an anodyne. Just not a lot of evidence it works for that. It is around today. It's still a clothing dye. It's still a cosmetic dye. It is still a food dye. I'm only going to name 1 or 2 things. I don't want to ruin your personal favorites. Cochineal, though, is today said to be found in things like red fruit juices or candies like gummy bears. If you're curious to know if you're getting some or not, look on the back of the label. What it should say are things like carmine, carminic acid, or other natural ingredients. How's that know? Good news is it's all natural, though. Now, as far as this hospital's closing, by 1821, it's falling into disrepair. They were intending to move more towards either the St. Francis Barracks or the government house for a new location. They never got the chance to. In the middle of that year, it becomes American territory. The Americans are moving in, the Spanish are leaving. The last we really hear of this building is in 1823. During the American territory period, there was a letter written that it was supposed to be a watchtower. They wanted it to be, but there's really no record after that, whether it was ever used again. We just know by 1870 it burned down or was repurposed in some way, and in the 1950s they found the footings, the foundations, and they rebuilt it in 65 as a museum, based as closely as they could to the original. And it's really been a museum ever since.